All right, let's see here. In a matter of moments, the franchise tag window opens. And the fact that Darren Urban is not here, what does that portend? What does that mean exactly? We'll get to the introduction of Craig Grialou here momentarily. And apparently we put on our Sunday best, Danny, because, we are loaded. We got a lot to – don't call it the offseason.
Well, now that Darren's not here to drag us down.
That's right. It's just the non-game season. I think hashtag addition by subtraction.
Should I wait to – should I stop with my my comments about Darren until as my supervisor until my review is over with?
I think any and all comments are fair game.
Oh. Well,
it's his loss. It's really a loss.
Timing is everything, though. If you wait a couple of weeks, might be a little more opportune because, the results.
I take back what I said, Darren.
The results are in. No, okay, so Darren, let's see. No franchise tag for Darren, or, is he still hashing that out?
Maybe. Cap casualty?
Perhaps. Maybe a holdout. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe by the end of this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation, we'll figure that out. Craig Grialou sitting in. Craig, is there any sort of questions you have off the top before we proceed for the next hour or so? A lot to cover here.
Anything is fair game on Cardinals Underground. So
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
All right. There we go. That's good. Do you want to start, Craig, with the latest mock draft that came out?
Because you can never have enough mock drafts, right?
I'm noticing a trend, though. There's a name that keeps popping up, and it's not Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. Happens to be a Michigan defensive tackle by the name of. See, now, if this wasn't video, it was just audio, I do the old envelope, please. Okay, and people might actually think it's an envelope. Kenneth Grant is Daniel Jeremiah's pick 2.0. And it's the second in less than 3 days because the editor of NFL.com, Dan Parr, see, you ain't nobody without a mock draft these days. So even the editor, the off-air guy, has his own mock draft. He had the Cardinals trading down from 16 to 22, getting a third and fourth round pick and taking Kenneth Grant. Now, Daniel Jeremiah, Danny, says that Kenneth Grant's going to go to the Cardinals 16th overall after Michael Williams, who has been mocked to the Cardinals, the edge out of Georgia, goes 15 to Atlanta. Do we really have to worry about Atlanta, by the way? We'll get to them in a minute. And Tyler Booker, turns out, goes 13th overall to Miami, according to the latest mock.
You can't be upset if Cardinals are going to attack the trenches, right? Or find a pass rusher in some sense. So if that's the way it pans out either way, I think fans would be happy with that. And that's going to be an area of emphasis this offseason, draft or free agency is the trenches. That's something that General Manager Monty Ossenfort has made clear. That is where you start when you are creating a foundation, and not just long-term, even short-term on a year-to-year basis when you have the inevitable turnover to some degree. So to see a defensive name is something that I think excites a lot of people. It's a mock draft, right? This could be so far from what reality even is, especially since we have seen the quote-unquote Monty magic on a draft weekend before. But it is exciting. I think maybe not so exciting when you start getting to mock drafts 8, 9, 10. But to have something right now, 1 and 2, it's exciting to have something.
I think if you're mocking an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman of the Cardinals at 16, you've done your homework and you know what the needs are with this Arizona Cardinals, at least from our perspective, not being in the room. It would not surprise me, though, if Monty does what he likes to do, and that is acquire more draft capital, because at the moment, all they have is 6, which is half as much as the Cardinals had a year ago. So you go from 12 to 6. I know no one likes to be picking in the top 5, especially when you're talking about that conversation in November and December. But when you get closer to draft, it's like, oh, there's excitement that builds when you're picking in the top 5 because all of a sudden the spotlight is on you. But 16, that becomes a little more difficult to predict.
We talked, and I'm guilty of this, saying, okay, the NFL's a copycat league. You look at the Eagles, and what did they do? They built from the inside out, especially the offensive line, and all 5 offensive linemen got all-pro votes, etc. But look what they did on the defensive line in 2 years. It's exactly what the Rams have done in 2 years. Rams lost Aaron Donald. What have they done the last 2 years? Kobe Turner, Byron Young, and then they followed it up with Jared Verse, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Braden Fisk. Look what the Eagles did in 2 years since they lost Super Bowl 57 at State Farm Stadium. 8 of the 11 starters on defense changed out. And the epicenter of the defense, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. So if the Cardinals did go Darius Robinson last year and a Kenneth Grant this year, for example, or another defensive lineman edge to be named later along that defensive front, I would not be shocked whatsoever. A, it's just Monty's way, as you say, Danny, but B, that seems to be a trend right now in the NFL.
That's also a room, the defensive line room, that has a handful of pending free agents. So moves are going to have to be made regardless by this front office, whether, again, that is free agency or draft, and that's possibly re-signing some of the players on this roster or looking outside. And then when you start to move back a little bit from the trenches, your outside linebackers group as well. That is a room with a handful of pending free agents. So you're going to have to do something to put bodies in that room. And that all technically starts with free agency, but the draft is going to have a heavy hand in that moving forward.
I am curious on whether it's Monty or JG, how they view Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols when you're having this conversation with the front seven, because they played so few games, you hardly ever saw them on the football field. So are they, quote-unquote, free agents again, new additions to the team, or did you see enough? I mean, I believe it was 9 games combined that they were on the field together, and only 2 games in which they played together, those two on that defensive front.
No two players, no two injuries or recoveries are the same, but the Cardinals decided to do that with LJ Collier the year prior in the defensive line. Got hurt the first game of the season, had a 1-year deal, and the Cardinals liked what they saw enough of him to keep him. Now, Jones and Nichols are not free agents to be. They signed longer contracts. That is something to keep in mind, though. Those are 2 names that we haven't really considered because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind during the season when they're not able to play. So if you are able to get them back early enough in the offseason especially, that could be a big boost to this D-line.
I got it. Darren left for the combine early and left you guys behind. That's what happened. That's what's going on here. He got a head start.
A full week, though?
What can you do in Indy for 2
no.
weeks?
You can only go to St. Elmo so many times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Darren's a veteran of Indianapolis. If anybody knows the lay of the land.
I'm proud he's taking vacation.
Well, you know what they do at the Indianapolis 500? They do testing. They go out to the track in the offseason. They do testing. I don't know. Maybe all right, look.
Testing the Wi-Fi in certain areas.
We'll get to the combine in a minute. Right now, I want to go to something else that was posted on NFL.com that I hadn't really considered. We talk about fortifying this roster via the draft, via free agency, traditional free agency. What about potential salary cap casualties? Have we factored in some of the big names, some of the big salaries that might be let go by other teams and hence might be available? Because, for example, if you're looking to get to the quarterback, and you know our power poll, Craig, I explained this to Wolf.
I'm very familiar.
The game of football is 1, quarterback, 2, get to the quarterback, 3, protect that quarterback. So if you're trying to check box number 2, says here Joey Bosa is about to count over $25 million against the cap. And he had 5 sacks last year. And we know he hasn't exactly been available quite a bit. Could Joey Bosa be out on the open market? What about Sam Hubbard, who 2 years ago was pretty good and effective for Cincinnati off the edge along with Trey Hendrickson? Last year, career low 2 sacks, career low 3 tackles for loss. His pass rush Pro Football Focus grade, dead last among 69 edge rushers, and cutting him would save nearly $10 million in cap savings, and the Bengals have cap issues. They're trying to pay the big 3.
So are you seeing this as players who are coming off not their best year, haven't been fully available, giving them a chance here while you might be able to get them for a little less money and having them turn things around in Arizona?
Bingo, right? I mean, sort of the buy low, sell high. You get them on a short-term deal, maybe depress market value coming off, seasons like they just turned in. Now, you might go a little too far when they throw Von Miller in there. I mean, age 36 next month. He's had 14 sacks total in 3 years. But, I mean, his cap number for this coming season is $24 million. He gone, right? I mean, Von Miller's not coming back. Here's one that's interesting. Samson Ebukam started all 17 games in 23 for Indy. He was not at the joint practice because he tore his Achilles earlier in camp. But the year before, he had 9.5 sacks, graded out really high. But since then, they've taken Kwity Paye and Laiatu Latu in the first round each of the last 2 years. So with his cap number, yeah. So what I'm saying is there could be some of these cap casualties that hit the market that I know I haven't really considered beyond the draft or free agency. That could be a possible addition.
That's a fair point. I like the idea of bringing in a veteran. This is a very young roster. And while they have shown, these younger players, not even just rookies, their capabilities out on the field and being part of the foundation in the future, there is value in having veterans sprinkled in of the experience, what they're bringing out into the field, what they are adding into the position room and meetings and watching film together. This staff has shown that they can get more out of players than maybe players have in previous stops in their career. Look at linebacker Mack Wilson Sr. Didn't get a lot of reps in New England, comes here and becomes a staple on this Cardinals defense with his versatility and how much of a dog he is and the mentality he brings, the tone he sets on this defense. Kaiser White came in to Arizona 2 years ago and was able to not have a resurgence because he played well in Philly, but be able to carry that over and be a large part of this Cardinals defense. So this staff has shown that they can find these players, and even if they are, to your point, Paul, coming in maybe off on an off year, lower production, that this staff can find a way to get the most out of them and help them kind of resurge their career if they're coming off a low year.
You mentioned LJ Collier earlier. That wasn't a cap casualty, but a change of scenery sometimes with these players going from Seattle to Arizona. Maybe this Cardinals front office coaching staff sees a better way to fit that type of player into whether it's the offense or defense. But with cap casualties, when players all of a sudden think they're going to be on a roster and all of a sudden find that they're not going to be on a roster, there's a reason why. Either too much money, availability, lack thereof, but you don't just get rid of good players. If a team wants to keep you around, they'll find a way to keep you around no matter what the salary cap number happens to be. Teams are very good at, quote-unquote, manipulating things a little bit to make sure they keep good players from hitting the street. So my guess is it's if there's a surprise name out there and maybe there's a connection from either the front office or the coaching staff that they see, all right, maybe it didn't work there. Let's try to give them an opportunity here. And then again, sometimes it's availability. And we saw a year ago, all the free agents that were brought in, there were 11 different free agents a year ago. They were all available in 2023. Now, most of those in 2024 were not available, and that's, I think, a lot of it is bad luck when you're talking about the amount of injuries that last year's Cardinals free agent class suffered last season.
All right, you want a surprise name on this list, and then I'll move on? Christian Kirk.
I saw that for the first time Tuesday morning, and I did a double take when I came across that online.
His cap hit's going to be $24 million this year. Gone, right? Brian Thomas. Stand out. By the way, NFL.com redrafted the rookies in round one, went back and gave all the grades to all the rookie classes of all the teams now that a full season has elapsed. And, for example, I think Washington was number one with Jaden Daniels, et cetera. But in there, they redrafted some of the position groups. And the redrafting was actually Brian Thomas Jr. 1, Malik Neighbors 2, Marvin Harrison Jr. 3. But Christian Kirk, $24 million cap hit done. Last 2 years, though, he's missed 14 games combined, and he has 4 touchdowns combined the last 2 years.
That one would intrigue me. One, you get a player that is coming back home, but then you remember what do we talk about with this passing offense for a couple of years now? The downfield passing game and how it's lacked something. Go back and look at Kyler Murray's best seasons as a downfield thrower. His weapon was Christian Kirk.
His 2 Pro Bowl years, I'm thinking in Dallas, that 70-yard strike, right, just with the fingertips right into the hands of, think of the chemistry between Kyler and Christian Kirk that I'm guessing it would take about 2 weeks to recapture that chemistry that goes all the way back to their college days when they were both at A&M together. There are aspects of it that would make for a really good fit.
It is intriguing. That's not even the only former Cardinal name that's been brought up for free agency this week on the mailbag. Craig, which you and Zach Gershman filled in with Darren on vacation, Calais Campbell, former Cardinal whose name was brought up in a question on the mailbag.
That's someone that, now, Calais I would love to see back in this locker room. Does he want to play? I believe this would be, year 18 or 19? And then the fact, I think he's real comfortable in the state of Florida right now, and then whether you go back to the West Coast. But Calais, put it this way, Paul. I mean, you hosted a show with him for several years on the Big Red Rage. He is a dynamic personality, and I think would fit well in this Cardinals locker room.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, he fits well in any locker room. He's an all-time leader, all-time player. Just the respect when we were in Miami this year, guys like Paris Johnson Jr., pointing him out. Look at Big Calais 93 and the OG. By the way, there was an NFL Insider report once the trade deadline passed, and it was a good month afterwards. It was a bit later, that stated per sources the Cardinals were one of the teams that came calling to Miami before the trade deadline to check on the availability of Calais Campbell, because at that point it was a remote chance Miami was going to make the postseason. And so since he was on a one-year deal, Cardinals, because of their injuries along the defensive line, it made sense, right? They made that call just to see if he was available, and ultimately, obviously, Calais wasn't traded. But, yeah, we could do a whole podcast on Calais Campbell. By the way, before we get into a few of the other elements, Craig, are you ready to go no huddle? We're going to go read and react here.
I'm ready for anything. Okay. Again, I'm just happy to be here and try to fill the seats of one Darren Urban.
Okay, until you're not. We'll see how long that lasts. Okay, read and react here. I read, you guys react. Let's see here. In honor of USA-Canada hockey, where they had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds, because that's what happens. The Kachuk brothers take matters into their own hands when you're booing the American anthem. Which team would you like to fight? If you're the Cardinals, which team would you like to fight in the NFL? Which team would you like to drop the gloves against? Is that too aggressive?
It's got to be a team within the division, right? I think it's got to be a team within the division that you see twice a year, at least for me personally. Dani's got this big smile on her face.
Why does my gut tell me the Rams? That's where my first thought goes.
I was getting more close to home for me because you growing up in the Bay Area. I would go the 49ers.
See, and you know what, though? If I was to go...
Paul would go Seattle.
Of course, it's last place Seattle.
If I'm going in the division, I'm going Seattle. Because you know what? The 12s have it coming. I'll just leave it that way. You know what? I'd throw out the Raiders. Because I'd like to try and get this rivalry going, this desert rivalry.
You just want to go to Vegas.
Between Vegas and Phoenix. We need a rivalry. We need an edge.
You're talking about a preseason rivalry? How many times are you going to play that? It's not like you're playing the Panthers every single season.
Once again, they should just restructure and take Seattle, put them back in the AFC, and stick the Raiders over into the NFC West.
I'm over that. Maybe I'll change my answer to the Panthers. Because why do we play them every year? Every year.
That's right.
Is nobody else sick of that?
Yeah. I'd say Denver. I think everyone's sick of their head coach. Haughty. If Kansas City would have three-peated, then you would have been doing the rest of the league a favor, but they lost, so that's already taken care of. Dallas, yeah. I mean,
they're on the schedule this year.
True. Yeah. What have the Cowboys ever done in the last 30 years to deserve that whole, top franchise valuation in America's team moniker? Nothing. So, just based on principle alone, maybe you drop the gloves against Dallas.
And that's an organization that just does not know how to keep talent around.
Thanks, Craig. What about Detroit? If you're asking for teams I would not want to fight, Detroit would probably be top of that list.
Yeah, the example from their head coach on down. I would. Let's put it this way. I'd want them on my side. Yeah. I'd team up. A little tag team effort.
Why do I have this memory? Once upon a time, the D-backs brawled the Dodgers, and this is a good 20 years ago probably, or Gibby Ball. Kirk Gibson ended up matching up against Mark McGuire. Gibby didn't want any part of that. Nobody wants any part of Dan Campbell. Let's just put it that way. Okay, I'm just going to throw it out there. All right, let's see what else we have here on the read and react. All right, Devin Witherspoon on Marvin Harrison Jr. Did you guys see any of these comments? Speaking of the stinking Seahawks, as I look for the actual, here it is. He's on PFT Live, Radio Row, Super Bowl, and they're asking him a series of questions, not unlike read and react here. And they asked the rookie Seattle corner about Marvin Harrison Jr., and his quote was, "I don't think he's that hard to guard because he's a bigger receiver. He does make contested catches, though. Even when you're close and guarding him pretty well, he can make contested catches. That's what frustrates you about him." So he started down one path and then sort of reversed course and walked it back a little bit.
The headlines immediately after that quote certainly made it seem like he was throwing shade toward Marvin's direction. But then you watch it, or you really read it and do a deep dive, maybe it is easier to cover Marvin Harrison Jr. because He doesn't get that separation. He's not that speed receiver. But what makes Marvin difficult to defend is what made Fitz difficult to defend. If you're going to throw the ball in his area, he's going to get it. Now, I think Marvin's a little bit a ways away from Larry Fitzgerald's status, but the contested catch, the one-handed grabs where I can outmuscle you a little bit, I think that's the next step or what we need to see Marvin become because we saw it for so many years with Larry Fitzgerald.
Well, go back to when Ken Wisenhunt and Todd Haley showed up. And what's the famous anecdote? Todd Haley looked at Larry Fitzgerald and said, "You're a big dog. Play like it. Don't go down after the catch. Run through someone. Run over someone." And then all of a sudden, Larry, after the catch, was a really tough tackle to the point where he was just running over Seahawks. Whenever you go to Seattle, he'd pick someone out and just waylay him if you're between him and the end zone. So maybe there is something to that. Here's the other thing I'll throw at Devin Witherspoon. Hello. I think at the end of this season, you guys can agree or disagree, and I know you will. I think the Cardinals found something a little extra with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s route tree. Those last couple of games, he was running some different routes. They expanded what they were asking him to do, what they were putting into the game plan. He even said, "I was running some different routes in that Week 17 game at the Rams." I think he's a different receiver in 2025. Not only is it year 2, and will he grow from his rookie year like almost every single rookie, and yes, there was a learning curve, but I think that he evolved in his game, and I think also the coaches maybe had a realization/epiphany as to what exactly he's capable of, and he will be utilized in a different way in this offense next season.
Confidence is a big thing that's going to improve from year 1 to year 2, and that's something that Drew Terrell, wide receivers coach, talked about near the end of the season, is kind of reminding Harrison of, this is who I am. I made it here. I deserve to be here. Essentially, go and show them who you are, more or less. And that's something that's going to come with time. And there were high expectations. And yes, he was the 4th overall pick in the draft. But that takes time to get used to the speed of the game and the connection with your quarterback and running his routes and going up against very different DBs than he saw in college and seeing more attention in the pros. So I think that everything trends towards seeing a jump from year 1 to year 2 for Harrison. And even still, when you look at the numbers, he did not have a bad rookie year. That's what's crazy is some of the things that you see online, some of the sentiments of he was so down, didn't meet expectations or standards. And it's if you're just looking at the stat sheet, he still performed and was productive. Now, when you look at the eye test, you start to wonder, why was it inconsistent? It wasn't until the final 2 games where he surpassed 50 or more receiving yards in back-to-back games, right? There were instances where he would pop off in the first quarter and then you wouldn't see him get targeted again until the 4th. So there are things to work on. I think consistency and confidence are 2 of those main ones. He's not coming off a bad rookie year, though.
Can he have more of an impact? And I think that word is what we did not see enough of against the Rams, in Miami against the Dolphins. But can you do that, to use Danny's word, on a more consistent basis to where all of a sudden defenses are keen in on you as opposed to, well, right now you've got Trey McBride and James Conner. Can you be that third face of the offense?
Yeah, because when you look at the numbers, you realize, wow, okay, that's a productive rookie season. It's among the most productive rookie seasons in Cardinals history. It really is. But it's a testimony to his talent, just how immensely talented he is, because when you watch him, you realize there's so much more under the hood that can be utilized next year. All right, read and react. Let's talk about the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft. Why do I get the sense that they're already both trying to speak into existence who's going number 1 overall? Because Cam Ward, who, by the way, is the betting favorite to be the number 1 pick in this draft, said in an event here after the Davey O'Brien Award, why they're giving out the top college quarterback award in mid-February, I have no idea. But he was quoted by AP as saying, okay, you're either going to draft me or you're not. This is Cam Ward. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. You've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that. End quote, Cam Ward.
Who doesn't say that every year? Who doesn't
confidence.
say that? Yes, absolutely.
You sure? You sure? Coming from the quarterback? To me, that's a red flag.
Don't you want your quarterback to have confidence in his ability? Now, are you worried about speaking it out loud and making noise about it?
And more, yes.
Now, the only downside is if you don't produce. Now, all of a sudden, we're going back to these quotes in week 10 or next year going, hey, where was this Cam Ward? It never showed up, i.e. Josh Rosen, and the 9 mistakes that were made before me. That's what you remember about Josh Rosen. Is this what we're going to remember about Cam Ward in a year or two? But I don't mind the confidence, because there's that fine line between being overly confident and maybe a little bit too stuck on yourself a little bit, but it doesn't matter to me.
Especially this part of the draft process is at some, to a certain degree, while yes, your play is going to speak for itself, you got to kind of advocate for yourself a little bit, right? You're trying to show teams why they should take you. And so I think when you're in this process of the college season has ended, you've had Senior Bowl, you're getting ready for the combine, all these things leading up to the draft of, okay, yeah, you want to get your name out there. You want to make sure that when people are talking about quarterbacks that are going to be drafted, your name is one that comes up. I think that plays a certain role in comments like this.
I would be very careful, be very, very afraid, Cam Ward, to say stuff like that. If you're basing it on the last 2 years, Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud, those are by far the exception to the rookie rule. In NFL history, that is a rare occurrence for C.J. Stroud to come in and take a 4-win team to the playoffs, win a playoff game in dominating fashion. Jaden Daniels to come in and take the woeful Washington franchise all the way to the conference championship game. That does not happen very often, and I think to some degree he's probably confident to begin with, but now he's maybe drunk on overconfidence looking at these 2 top picks from the last 2 years and thinking, yeah, I'm going to follow that trend. Because when I hear comments like, if you don't draft me, that's your fault, and I'll remember that, and you got to deal with that for the rest of my career when I play you, I think Johnny Manziel saying, I'm going to come in and wreck this league. And the only thing he wrecked was his entire career.
There are more quarterbacks to what you're referring to, Paul, but if you are going back with just recent history and seeing what Stroud and Daniels did, then, okay, if I'm Cam Ward, if I'm Shedeur Sanders or someone else, why can't I be the next? Why can't I make it 3 years in a row with a rookie quarterback taking over a team, taking over a franchise, and sending them to places that they haven't been in a long time? I think that's what I would want to hear if I drafted one of those players.
Okay, you mentioned Shedeur Sanders. Guess what? This is his component of this thing. So apparently he was playing video games, and when he was playing Madden and he was on camera and he said he only plays with the Cleveland Browns.
You believe that? You believe that, Paul?
He has ignited the Browns fan base already. They're clamoring online, where can I get a number 2 jersey already? They want a Shedeur. By the way, the stat is since 1999, the Browns have started 40 different starting quarterbacks. 40 different starting quarterbacks since 1999.
I thought it was the Giants. And then I thought it was the Raiders.
Yeah,
Paul,
how
many teams does he want to play for?
Paul, you are too smart to believe that he genuinely only plays as the Browns.
See, the Browns will take any player who actually says that they want to play for the Browns, all right? Because
who wants to willingly move to Cleveland, Ohio?
Right. I mean, with Myles Garrett saying I want out, I mean, they'll take anyone who actually wants to be one of them. So here we go. Why do I get this sense we have 2 more months of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward trying to speak it into existence as the first quarterback off the board, right? All right, react. What else do I have down in here? Okay, here's one. You guys are going to the combine. Props to ASU. When you see that Texas has 14 players invited to the combine, and the Arizona State Sun Devils have 1, Cam Scatterbo. Now, Jordan Tyson would have been invited if he didn't have the injury at the end of the year, the standout receiver. But for ASU to take Texas into overtime in a college football playoff game, and Kenny Dillingham has 1 player invited to the combine against a Texas team that has 14 of them going to the combine, I saw that and I'm like, wow. It just further reinforces the coaching job I thought Kenny Dillingham did at that staff.
Team versus individuals. Not that Texas wasn't a great team, but can you coach up the talents, lesser talent, to where collectively as a unit you are much better than 11 individuals opposite you who don't work together for the benefit of the team. And it goes back to Jonathan Gannon, team first. We want guys that will put the Arizona Cardinals ahead of their own individual success, because team success, eventually you will get that individual success.
Do we think Darren is going to fanboy over Cam Scattaboo in Indy?
He is staying an extra day just to speak with the Arizona State Sun Devil running back.
Oh, okay. Well,
let's just fuel the fire of the Cardinals drafting a running back.
Yep.
Sure, Darren.
Okay, here's one for you. Read and react. As once again, we have so much stuff here. I have to find. There it is. My new favorite euphemism, all right, non-football here, my new favorite euphemism in this inflationary environment where seemingly everything is increasing in cost. I got a notification from a certain provider the other day, quote, "We are in the midst of a price process." Not a price. They won't say the words increase. They won't say the words.
No, it's coming.
Raising your rates, jacking up the cost. No, we are in the midst of a price process.
And the last time that happened where it was a price reduction was when? Yeah. Never.
Absolutely not. It's except when you hold a tanking stock.
And the
maybe.
worst kinds are where, depending on where you live, you're limited in terms of power. Or trust me, because over the week, last week, Paul, I was actually looking, thinking, man, my Wi-Fi bill has gone up like more than $30 in probably the last 18 months for my one bedroom that I haven't gotten anything else for. And you know what? That's all I'm stuck with for the area in which I live.
That's the only
so
provider.
So you exploring
I'm not going to ask what you guys are paying, but I know for a fact I am paying too much.
Go with your mobile carrier provider, and they now do home internet Wi-Fi.
Man.
You should look into that. You really should.
Or you just spend more time at work to use the work Wi-Fi.
By the way, we mentioned the Rams.
Is that funny, Craig?
We mentioned the Rams and we mentioned the Seahawks. Here's equal opportunity looking over the block wall into the backyards of our NFC West neighbors. Did you see this one? This one's hard to believe. Good Morning Football ran a holy cannoli stat the other day. Brock Purdy, in his Niners career as a starting quarterback, when he has all his big weapons, all of them, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle, Trent Williams, he is 17-4. If he's missing at least one of those Pro Bowlers, he's 10-11 as starting quarterback. Should that give the 49ers pause that unless he's the quarterback of an absolutely loaded offensive unit, maybe he's not worth $50 million a year?
Couldn't you say that, though, about darn near every quarterback across the league? If they are missing one or two or three of their Pro Bowlers on offense, that they are less of a quarterback because they don't have the weapons around them? I mean, you elevate the quarterback should be able to elevate the talent around them. Yet at the same time, if you consistently don't have that talent at your availability, then all of a sudden you can only do so much.
I do think it'll be interesting. Do you foresee that Purdy's contract would make him one of the highest paid?
Oh, I think so at this point, based off his resume and what he's accomplished individually. Well, his agent's going to certainly press for that.
Right.
Now it becomes, all right, can you become that quarterback that doesn't take as much because for the betterment of everyone else,
they've
to
got
keep
a lot
everyone
of decisions
else
to make over there in the Bay.
Joe Burrow's facing the same thing in Cincinnati. Does he take less money to make sure his playmakers remain happy?
I mean, Joe Burrow has been very adamant with the media about wanting players to stay and get deals and stay in Cincinnati. So it might not be a crazy idea if Burrow does take less money to keep those weapons around him.
He recently pointed out, how did the Eagles pay everyone and still win Lombardi trophies, ... He pointed that out to ownership in Cincinnati. That could be known as winning behavior. But Craig Grialou here on Cardinals Underground, we define winning behavior maybe a little differently.
I see you. Let's go. Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes. That might have been the reaction by Howie Roseman after he got brained by a can of beer. Maybe he might have been a little woozy, a little dizzy. Come on now. Speaking to the Eagles, we'll start right there. Eagles fan base, your GM, is maybe more responsible than any single person in that organization for your Super Bowl championship. And he gets domed by a can of beer?
Well, was it a good pass and Howie Roseman just didn't get his hands up? I didn't see.
Did you see the video? I mean,
I only saw the aftermath.
No, the video. This beer can came from literally out of nowhere. He was not ready for it at all, and it's just like, what are we doing if we're Philadelphia fans, regardless of what team you root for?
Probably lose an eye.
Why are you throwing beer cans? And if you're going to throw it from where you are, they are full beer cans. Why are you throwing it to someone who's not ready to catch it?
So he didn't drop it like Akeem Butler back in the day.
Right
no,
off the dome
and
bounced away.
Well, props to him for still taking the podium. And, the now infamous quote, "I bleed for this city."
See, that's a winning response.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I saw online a local news station that was live streaming the parade and everybody taking to the podium. And it was just an edit. And it was a couple minutes long. And it was every time they had to apologize to their viewers on air for the vulgar language that was being used, the profanity, by everybody who took to the podium. And it was constant of apologizing for the language that was being used, which was so funny.
All right, we have another Eagles angle here on winning behavior, or maybe not so much. Do we need to apologize in advance for a certain word that you will hear on your own? On Valentine's Day, okay, this is a Valentine's Day episode of, Craig, we are told one of the most popular podcasts in the listening universe. Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, spouse of Jason Kelsey. And they were telling the story of their second date. And let's just say that Jason broke wind and the storytelling does not stink.
We went ice skating at Penn's Landing. There's an outdoor ice rink where I farted tying my skates. And I couldn't even play it off because it was so audible. Like there was no way to get out of it.
I grew up in a fart funny house. It's like farts are funny.
That's a green flag. Let me tell you.
The issue is that in that moment, I'm like, you cannot be crying, laughing when this man picks his head back up. He's gonna be like, how immature are you? And so I was just trying desperately to calm down, stop laughing. That wasn't that funny. But this man bent over, farted, and then went,
whoops.
Well, they're obviously comfortable in their own skin, comfortable in their own marriage, comfortable with sharing with the universe.
Love story, Paul.
The whole ice skating thing, and in Philadelphia, the whole Rocky undertones, the first date going out skating, with Rocky Balboa. And that added another layer of infotainment, I guess. Was that TMI? I mean, at what point is that just TMI? Is that good podcasting, or is that a violation of just good taste?
I think we can say it's good podcasting for Kylie Kelsey. I don't necessarily think that's maybe the route we start taking here on Cardinals Underground.
Yes, thankfully, no. We've had some regrettable
I'll
moments.
second that response.
Luckily, nothing quite that profane, if you will. Here's one. A Michigan judge apparently has had it with shoplifters at the local Walmart. So the new sentence, this is for, sort of just petty theft and small shoplifting offenses. He has now ordered those convicted to wash cars in the Walmart parking lot. Feel the shame, own the shame, be seen washing others' cars.
In the winter?
Well, they're going to wait till the winter lifts.
Okay, it's nice of them.
And let me tell you, as someone who spent a few years in Michigan, you wouldn't believe how dirty some of those vehicles are by the time you hit April.
At least you're being productive. Can I just say this, though, about this is just shopping in general. Is it too hard to ask for people to return the grocery carts when they are done unloading the groceries into their car?
No, it is not too much, Craig.
I find these carts everywhere, even when there's a place to return them 10 feet away. I have a huge problem when I go into any parking lot and I'm dodging grocery carts because people can't put them back to where they belong.
You go to turn into a parking spot and you can't even pull all the way forward because there's a cart right there. Okay. That says a lot about who you are as a person if you don't return them.
Okay. As long as we're talking about parking in general, look, what this judge in Michigan really needs to address, and what needs to be a criminal offense effective immediately, as long as we're just making up laws right now in this country, door dings. door dings
Yeah, I've got a couple of those.
should be met with prison time. Your door at no point should make contact with someone else's door. I guess you could contend if they're over the line and they're in your parking space, maybe they had it coming. But if they're properly parked, at no point should your door make contact with another vehicle. And if only we could go through the Walmart parking video, the video cams, and try and find these flagrant offenders and make them do body work on cars. You put them out in the middle in springtime and give them a welding unit.
This is why Paul parks 200 yards away from the entry point of the building.
Yeah.
All buildings.
Yeah, I was trying. Okay. The only thing that might be more distasteful than the door ding would be the sight of a yard full of venomous snakes. Did you see this story in Australia?
Oh, God, I thought you were going to say here in Arizona. I was going to get so worried.
The backyard over here behind you, Danny.
You probably run into this in Texas as well, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know, and you've been in Arizona long enough, but never, ever start pulling away like a pile of debris or a pile of like old, lumber or garbage, because you have no idea how many scorpions could possibly be under there. Well, this guy in Australia found out the hard way when he removed a pile of mulch, and there were hundreds of venomous red-bellied black snakes right in front of him, and I'm guessing he nearly collapsed like Indiana Jones. He nearly got apoplectic, and at the sight of him, almost had to be rescued on the spot.
Snakes.
Yeah.
Why does it always have to be snakes?
I don't like that.
Yeah. Your greatest fear. Would snakes be up there? What would be your greatest fear?
Greatest fear? I don't know if
Greatest
they'd be
fear.
snakes, but
Phobia.
they are up there. Or
Phobia,
sharks in the
fear.
ocean. Any animal that could eat me.
Any animal that you can't see coming at you. Yeah.
You want to know what is
blindsided.
interesting? I wouldn't say this is one of my top fears, but I was actually thinking about this pretty recently. Something that either becomes more of a fear or you like it significantly less the older you get. And I'm not just talking about like going to the dentist. Birds. I don't have a fear of birds, but I feel like the older I get, I'm like
Annoying.
I don't want any of them flying near me. I don't like it.
Or if they nest near your home.
If I can admire from afar, that's fine.
Craig,
but when they're flying in front of your face,
I'm kind of surprised that Craig didn't cite salad dressing. That he didn't have a fear or phobia of salad dressing.
It's okay. Yeah.
'Cause
What are we 40 minutes into this thing? You're finally bringing it up?
I'm just,
It's a regular occurrence that I receive strays from one of the three of you on a regular basis here.
Well, it came up last week. I'm an
avid listener. I listen to every single episode.
Who in their right mind?
what do you have to say about
mean-
eating dry salad?
There's dry January, but dry salad?
There's nothing wrong with lettuce or spinach. I do not like soggy lettuce or soggy spinach.
Soggy, okay.
You pour salad dressing on said salad, all of a sudden that salad is soggy.
Well,
Even just a little dressing for flavor.
No,
if you leave it for 3 hours, it's soggy. But if you're eating it in real time,
well, like you, Paul, you're eating your salad last, so
okay.
now all of a sudden that lettuce is no longer crisp.
Okay, touche. Well, I know I need to get cultured, but Craig is just proving he needs to get cultured, so say no more. Danny, we'll segue to you.
Getting cultured with Danny. It is not just directed at Paul.
Am I the default uncultured Philistine around here?
Yes.
You got me very excited now.
I am on social media and consume more pop culture than both of you combined.
I think I'm being unfairly profiled, but go ahead.
Let's go. Craig, welcome to your first Getting Cultured. This is a pretty sports-heavy segment this week. Starting off with the Eagles parade. Did you guys see the wedding?
By the way, I'm noticing the cowbell. Is that Jameis Winston on the cowbell or no? I'm sorry, Danny. Go ahead. The wedding.
There was a couple who, the bride was in a full wedding dress, had the sister marry the two of them as the parade was passing by them. Which, when we were in Philly last year and I saw a couple get engaged at the Rocky statue, this really didn't surprise me. It's very Philly-esque.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the photographer was on the move. Actually, the bride and groom were on the move. Like, how are you taking your photos? It's a moving target behind you.
They posted up at a spot. They waited for the buses to come by, and that's when they got married.
You talk about the no-huddle offense, shotgun wedding. I mean, they did that instantly.
That's
then
true.
boom. Okay, all right.
Probably saved a lot of money, too.
Sure. It was NBA All-Star Weekend, which was deemed a pretty big bust. I personally was going back and forth between that, the SNL 50th anniversary. A lot of complaints about the NBA All-Star Weekend, the format, players not participating. Thankfully, though, the slam dunk contest. You want to talk about a three-peat? Chiefs couldn't get it done. You know who could?
Oh, yeah. Mac the Knife.
Absolutely. You know that Mac has made more money from his 3 slam dunk contest victories than he has in his NBA career from salaries.
I did see that.
Because most of his career has been in the G
Yes.
League,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Hey, let me tell you, he is highly entertaining. He single-handedly saved All-Star Weekend,
Yes.
based on what I could tell, and I didn't pay much attention.
You didn't
because
see the dunk over the car?
I know I saw the highlight reel of his 3 or 4 best dunks. Ridiculous. I mean,
Yes.
splendicular. It was outstanding. But as for the rest of the whole All-Star Weekend, look, if the players don't care, why should we care? I'm not investing any time in it.
You know who you could argue did not care? The GOAT, LeBron James. He did not disclose that he was not going to play because of ankle problems until it was too late for him to be replaced. Then in the team photo, he shows up in street clothes. He's not even wearing the uniform.
Wow.
People were not happy about that online. In lieu of their All-Star game, the NHL, 4 nations, you talked about that briefly, Paul, 3 separate fights in the first 9 seconds between USA and Canada, which should make the next time they meet, which is Thursday night, a pretty exciting matchup.
I'll be watching.
By the way, I am old enough to remember when I was covering the Coyotes in the late 90s and Keith Tkachuk was the team captain. All these little punks running around playing stickball. That's the Tkachuk brothers right now. I mean, you talk about a sobering moment. In fact, I need a moment to regroup. Go ahead, Dani.
Okay, then I'll take it back. Baseball is returning. Spring training is about to begin. Good news for fans of Joe Buck. He is returning to baseball. First time since 2021 he's calling opening day between the Brewers and the Yankees.
Is this a one-off, or is this something ESPN says, hey, we're paying you $20 million plus. You're doing more than just
No
Monday Night
off-season
Football.
for you.
I need a return on our investment.
We have talked pretty extensively, I would say, about the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Drake did drop an album. It was with Party Next Door. I'm sure neither of you know who that is.
No clue.
I will say, you can take my word for it, not a great album. When Kendrick Lamar goes on the biggest stage of the Super Bowl and starts singing the diss tracks and you come out with an album, you've got to crush it. He did not, in my opinion. Not his best. Not even close.
Did he rush the album, you think, the production thereof, just because he was so intent on getting vengeance and trying to get back? And no?
I don't think so.
Okay, right.
And the last point of getting culture this week, we go local. Footprint Center signage has been taken down at the arena.
Okay.
So there's going
Downtown
to be
Phoenix.
Downtown Phoenix. Now, supposedly, Footprint is still going to be a partner of the Phoenix Suns, but will not have naming rights. So when you've got an all-star game, you've got a couple different big events coming to town in the next couple of years, I'm sure that there is no shortage of organizations and companies who want to have their name out on front.
We could pool the money together between the three of us and maybe Alex in the corner and Omo across the glass that, I don't know, maybe we can come up with our own
You
naming
must be
rights
making
system.
a lot more money than me, Craig.
So they haven't announced the new naming
No.
partner.
They have not. They just
Yeah.
started taking down the signage.
'Cause
So
I've,
that caught people's attention.
Heard a couple of things, a little bit in the wind, stuff blowing around. A few
Oh,
people.
Paul's already been cultured.
I'm not
You
ready.
don't need me.
I'm not ready to report. I'm not reporting anything. I will just say if there's a former Suns connection to the new naming partner, don't be shocked.
Okay,
just
we
leave
will
it
not
right
be
there,
shocked.
okay? I'll leave
You've
it
been
right there.
cultured. You're welcome.
Very well done. Very well done. That is good stuff. And by the way, other items of interest we just thought we'd throw out. We talked about this a little bit last week, I believe. Craig, I don't know if you've heard it, but did you catch wind of Paris Johnson Jr.'s mom? She does her own podcast, okay? And so she's on with C.J. Stroud's mom, Kim Stroud, Monica Johnson. And we talked earlier about rising prices. I mean, can you imagine having to feed Paris Johnson Jr. in today's grocery prices? Well, even just a few years ago, it's staggering what sort of investment that took month to month. So here's a couple of moms of a couple of really prominent football players sort of reminiscing and telling stories from the front.
With athletes, you have to eat tons of calories.
I can't even imagine feeding an offensive lineman.
Paris. When Paris left, he left home and he went to college, my grocery bill went down $500.
Oh my goodness, can you imagine?
And spaghetti, you're going to eat that until it's gone. Yeah. So you just reinvent it each day. And Paris is like, if I see any spaghetti, I'm going to scream. So.
By the way, Monica Daniels, as I correct myself, how about that? $500 a month. In today's world, easy. That's probably, I mean, and that's cooking a lot of spaghetti.
Yes. Stay away from the eggs.
That's like, so we had the profile on azcardinals.com, National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and all the different employees around. And I had the pleasure of interviewing the two lead chefs, okay, Heather and Tara, and just the stories of just the volumes of food that pro football players eat and how they had to adapt, because they both came from like restaurants, from actually like premier restaurants, and just to watch an O-lineman go in there and scoop 6 helpings of mashed potatoes on one plate and then move on to the next item, right? And how they're always monitoring, and they have their, whenever the O-linemen walk in and they're yelling out, restock, that's the key word, restock, and then everyone starts cooking again furiously. Some of the anecdotal stuff from the Cardinals kitchen is just mesmerizing.
It's a lot of food consumed in just a short amount of time, too. You're talking about like an hour and a half for lunch. Yeah, that's a lot. Twice a day if you're serving dinner, too. 3 times they got breakfast, too.
They've got to eat a lot of calories to maintain the weight and muscle, given the calories they're burning at practice and lifting weights.
I asked, what are the most, give me a power poll of the most popular items that you make for Cardinals players. Chocolate chip pancakes. They said, we'll make pancakes. Everyone's always yelling at us to throw chocolate chips in them. We said, we'll do that earlier in the week. We'll also give them bacon earlier in the week, not late in the week when you're getting near game day. Turkey bacon. Because you don't want the grease. You don't want any chance.
I like turkey bacon, that's fine.
Of a way, players apparently don't like the turkey bacon. They want real bacon.
Well,
that's what the players. So that was one. I'm trying to think what else. And then steaks.
Mashed potatoes up there with the steaks.
And they'll actually do. And I guess what both of them said, what they learned, like the nutritionists teach them, that the red meat is really good in recovery. Lean red meat. So on Wednesday and Thursday, the 2 big practice days, that's when you're most apt to get a steak, for example, because the red meat somehow has wonderful properties of recovery and rehabbing the body after a big workout.
Interesting.
So all these little things that I learned talking to him, I thought was intriguing.
Are you going to incorporate that into your recovery process after your workouts?
Danny, I mean,
Paul's on a steak diet now.
I mean, it goes unsaid that I live in the gym over here, obviously.
It's on a carnivore diet.
By the way, I got dragged on 2 ridiculous hikes this weekend by a buddy of mine who's in town. Luckily, he doesn't live in town anymore. And the first hike he took me on was the Echo Canyon Trail, somewhere near Camelback, backside of Camelback. It wasn't even a trail. It was like all boulders. I'm like, what am I supposed to be, like a desert bighorn sheep here?
Is that the side of Camelback that has the railing that you hold on to? Yeah, I've done that one.
I mean, it's like straight Stairmaster for 2 hours. Like, what is going on with this?
It's tough. Did you make it to the top?
Well, I didn't quite make it all the way. I got about 80% of the way, and I'm like, dude.
I'll meet you on the way down.
Like,
when you're having like on all fours and you're crawling up the rocks.
I should have gone, because by the time I got to the bottom, I was okay. But I was like, I'm not gonna be able to walk tomorrow. So then I was so mad at myself. 2 days later, we did another one. We went to the Sunrise Peak Trail, and 2 miles to the top, and not bad. I need assistance getting out of this chair at the moment, but other than that. So
Paul will be hunched over as he walks into work on Wednesday.
That's right. By the way, speaking of Paris Johnson Jr., you see Nate Burleson gave his opinion about current NFL players who'd be great on TV. He mentioned Cam Jordan, Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson. Not going to argue with any of those. You got to throw Jameis Winston in there after his network TV debut.
Entertainment purposes, yes.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston would be top of my list.
George Kittle, I'm guessing he's absolutely natural on set. Every time they bring him on set after a game, he kills it. How about a Cardinals perspective, right? We've seen J.J. Watt. We've seen Kurt Warner. We've seen Jay Feely. Is there a next TV star in that Cardinals locker room when they're done playing?
Based off of last week's Big Red Rage with Justin Pugh, I don't know if do we qualify him as still being active? He hasn't officially retired, but I would put him up there. And I think sometimes your linemen, the guys that are closest to the line of scrimmage, sometimes they are the best when analyzing the game because they see it from a different perspective. But I put Justin Pugh up there.
I mean, if Justin Pugh said he hasn't filed his retirement papers, if he really has designs on playing again, he's got to put on like 50 pounds.
More steak?
I mean, seriously. He's not just going to put on his pads tomorrow. He has a totally different body type right now.
Calvin Beachum would be top of my list.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. He doesn't have time for broadcasting.
Yeah, that might be low on his list of priorities.
He is doing so many things.
His public speaking will be at a podium when he's governor or CEO. That's where his public speaking will be. You know who's really, really good, and he proved it again in the Big Red Rage, is Dennis Gardeck. Gardeck is excellent. He's not always the most accessible guy. I think he tries to keep it more in a team perspective. He tries not to make it about him. But when you do make it about him, like on the Big Red Rage, and it's designed just to talk about him, he's hilarious. His storytelling and, a little anecdotal stuff and the sense of humor and giving guys a business. I could see Gardeck, especially with the hair and everything. He kind of plays the role.
Michael Wilson.
You're right.
Very polished.
Very polished, yeah. He's another one who's probably more apt for a CEO role.
That's Stanford education,
than just being a loudmouth talking TV type, over here like us. So, yeah. By the way, I see here where, and I didn't realize this, coming full circle here on Cardinals Underground, the last franchise tag that was given out was 2020. It wasn't really even the classic franchise tag. Kenyon Drake, he received the transition tag. You got to go back to 2017. Chandler Jones was the last.
The non-exclusive or the exclusive franchise tag, and then they turned around and signed him a long-term contract extension.
Okay.
It's just not every team uses it, and the Cardinals just don't use either tag very often. Right now, if you're looking at your current free agents, who are you worried about leaving that you would say, all right, let's tag that player?
Most teams don't use either tag, franchise or transition, the biggest difference being what would you get as a comp if that player does go elsewhere. I don't think any player really makes sense looking at this Cardinals roster. Again, who is going to be a pending free agent that you are worried would not want to be here, but would it end up here in Arizona that you are trying to protect and keep on your roster?
Stay off the free agent market to allow the other 31 teams an opportunity to say, you know what, we're keeping them here.
The fact that the Cardinals made 3 extensions during the season with center Yelda Froholt, safety Budda Baker, and running back James Conner is telling that the names that were going to be pending free agents that they did not want to touch the market, they have already secured their future here with the Cardinals.
Do you guys expect a free agent quarterback to sign with the Arizona Cardinals? Because I ran upon this list the other day. Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Jimmy Garoppolo. Does he have ties to Monty Ossenford in New England?
That's not a crazy idea to bring in.
We're going to have to bring in somebody. It can't just be another young player. You're going to have to bring in,
Jacoby Brissett, New England ties. Jameis Winston, nope, they got a spot for him at Fox. Tyler Huntley, and now Aaron Rodgers. Okay.
Yeah, no.
So there's 3 in there that you could possibly entertain.
Although I say this, and I brought this up to, I can't remember which one of you, but Jonathan Gannon and Aaron Rodgers shared the golf course on Wednesday of Phoenix Open Week. They were both participating in the Pro-Am.
Take that back from manifestation. Don't put that out in the world. Take it back.
I'm just stating facts. Yeah. I have no idea if they ran into one another or not.
I'm going to boil this down. Here we go. This is pretty much a hot take. I should probably go get my oven mitt for even mentioning these 3 since there's no basis on anything. This is just me seeing the list. Marcus Mariota, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett.
It is doing your due diligence to look at veteran quarterbacks the way you would for any position. You want to make sure that, heaven forbid, you need somebody to fill in for Kyler Murray for whatever reason. You are going to have the least amount of drop-off as possible. You're going to have to make the fewest amount of changes to how you are running your offense. The second part of that, it's twofold, is you want competition for Clayton Tune. Going into now year 3 in the league, you want to make sure that he is, again, that backup quarterback you would want and need in that situation. And if there is somebody you think might be a better fit, you're doing the best thing for this team by bringing in competition. That's any position. So it really wouldn't surprise me if a quarterback is a free agent move because, one, you're going to need a body throughout offseason, throughout training camp, and you might as well make that body some competition to make sure that you are elevating every position, if you have to, on this team.
One name you did not mention, Paul, who's no longer available, and this is just happening in the last hour, Andy Dalton re-signed with the Carolina Panthers.
I did not see that.
So, and again, and I think that's what the type of quarterback you'd be looking to add to the room right now, as far as someone who's been around the league in a pinch. Hopefully, again, you never see the backup quarterback, but if needed to kind of get you until your starter is healthy again and maintain that playoff push or sustain success, then, yeah, you could add a veteran quarterback in that room. I mean, you're going to add somebody. I would think it would be a veteran who's been around the block.
What's been interesting to me is when I have seen this discussion come up online, some people have kind of gone in a tizzy about it. Like, it's such a crazy out there idea that the Cardinals could possibly look into signing a veteran quarterback. Why is that so crazy? Now, look, the names that you mentioned, those are not names that are going to be competing for the starting role. Kyler Murray's better than every quarterback you listed. So it's maybe that's my perspective of I'm not seeing this of what I've seen online of that's outrageous. The Cardinals are going to look at signing a veteran quarterback in free agency. It's not to replace Kyler Murray as your starter. So to me, I have missed why some people have deemed that as such a crazy idea when it's really not.
And then that would narrow down the list of potential quarterbacks out there who would like to come in to compete to be a starter, not knowing could come in and be a backup. There's another name, Daniel Jones, who's a free agent to be, who at this point in his career probably wants to compete to be a starter, not to come and compete and be the number 2 and then play only if your starter is hurt.
All right, speaking of lists, I'm going to wrap it up over here. The power poll of Ineptitude.
Oh, I love this.
So we have a couple of additions here based on this past weekend. And did you see over the weekend, Illinois men's basketball retired the jersey of Terrence Shannon Jr.?
I did see this.
Except when they raised it to the rafters and unveiled it, it was upside down.
I hope
That's
nobody got
you
fired
check
over that.
2, 3, 4 different times before you cover it up.
But wait, there's more. Even Terrence Shannon Jr. said before the event he was shocked when he found out they were going to retire his jersey because he played his first 3 years at Texas Tech. I mean, and this is not good. Some people wonder if the jersey was upside down by design. Somebody went in and changed it around because in the middle of last season or at some point during his Illinois career, he was suspended after being charged with sexual assault and then was eventually found not guilty. I bring that up only because what is Illinois doing retiring his jersey for everything I just said? 2 years and then that suspension. So they definitely have made the list of the power poll of Ineptitude.
So where do they rank, though?
Well, let me give you the other one, and then we'll hash this out. We'll update the standings here in a moment. Texas A&M baseball, Dani, has a new media policy, and it goes as follows. Players will not be made available after a loss.
What?
What are they,
that
USC?
Is not winning behavior.
USC tried that a couple different times.
USC football?
How are you setting up those players for success moving forward in their careers?
Maybe their number 1 ranking went to their heads because they're ranked number 1 in college baseball. Now they decided that, if our players lose, they're not going to be made available because, there's no tough times in life where you have to be accountable and, they are just college students. You maybe wouldn't want to teach them that, sometimes everything doesn't go your way, and you're going to have to, find a way to talk about some of the negative things. And,
all that's going to do is allow the media to go and talk about reasons they lost without any quotes, and it's just going to make the team look worse. Put them on the list.
All right. So with our new additions, I'm finally going to take out the endless shrimp executive at Red Lobster.
They
I'm
have
taking
a new
him out.
CEO, Paul.
Yes. Okay. So you're right, Dani. Okay. I am keeping Tyreek Stevenson in. I'm sorry for the Hail Mary epic fail. I'm keeping him in. I'm sorry. Ray Gunn is still number one.
I love it.
She's still in there.
She lives in infamy.
So with those two new additions here, Nico Harrison stays in, the Dallas Mavs GM for the Luka trade.
Thank you.
So I guess Andre Iguodala, the Warriors are out. The Warriors,
that's got to hit you close to heart.
It's tough. I mean, they retired his number when he's a one-time All-Star for the Denver Nuggets, and he's a one-time All-Star for another team, and you retired his jersey and number.
Maybe that's where Illinois got the inspiration from.
So he was a Finals MVP for the Warriors. I mean, there is that.
My goodness. So that's your new power poll of ineptitude. Last thing, what am I missing at the Combine since I've never been invited to actually
Did it get lost in the mail again?
To cover Combine. So,
I thought this year, Dani, we were going to have Paul join us.
We asked Darren. It was his decision.
So just give us a postcard of what's the best, what's the worst. I mean, what are you looking forward to? Let's start with that.
I've not checked the weather yet. Here I am going on a trip, and I've yet to check the weather
Craig,
forecast after
even
blaming the two of you about it. But you're all indoors.
It's all indoors.
Yes.
It's
Unless
like
you got to walk to go
like
to
downtown
dinner.
Minneapolis.
Yes.
Everything's indoors, right?
Yes,
they got
it
tunnels.
will be cold. It's fun to see everybody from around the league and get to hear from coaches and general managers for the first time since the season ended and kind of start truly turning the page and looking ahead to the next season. I don't think we're going to hit up St. Elmo's this year.
That's a Darren Urban decision.
A lot of decisions to be made on vacation.
Darren. Hey, when it's dinner time, Darren isn't the boss of you. You guys, it's a free country. You make your reservation where you want.
We will have a lot of content, though. We're still going to have cover two, just like how we did last year. Darren and I are going to call in. Paul's going to be here. We're going to do our regular Cardinals Underground, and then cover two. Is that what I just said? I just mixed up the names. Cardinals Underground, regular next week, and then cover two. Craig and I are going to do, I don't even know
Try to get as many interviews as possible and work Dani to the bone where she was literally physically and probably emotionally exhausted by the end of the week.
She was. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, but you get to sit down. History says you're going to be able to sit down with the GM and head coach, right?
Yes, that is the plan next week as well.
All right, good. We look forward to that, right? So one-on-one with JG and Monty. That's good. Then they'll meet the media. What do they get up at the podium? Like 10 minutes, 15 minutes? What do they typically?
10.
Yeah,
they keep. Once upon a time, it was 30 minutes. Now I think it's 15 to 20. I think JG spoke for almost 20 minutes last year.
Okay, all right. It's I get the sense because it's almost like these grassroots press conferences just break out. Like all of a sudden, this guy's at the podium, that guy's at the podium. I mean, is there really a schedule? How organized is it? Because it seems like different players go at different times, and you just got to keep your head on a swivel. You never know who's going to be talking next, right?
There is a schedule of general managers, coaches, and players, but then sometimes it doesn't prevent a GM, a coach, or another player. Usually the players are off limits outside of the media availability, but there's nothing stopping a GM or a coach or someone else in the front office to be pulled aside by someone they know for a one-on-one or even a quick breakout session. I think there's a handful of teams where the head coach and general manager speak to the media, and then all of a sudden there'll be a smaller group after they walk off the podium, and that's the local reporters that show up.
Gotcha.
Kind of back in the day when Buck Showalter would do two different press conferences, one for the beat writers and then one for the electronic media.
Yeah, I made that media guy mistake. So Buck Showalter, former D-backs manager, who was, let's just say he had his group of minions, the beat writers, right? And they were very loyal to him.
I take it you were not a minion.
Well, I found out the hard way because he broke the press conference and then went over to do a one-off, and I stood there, and he literally stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. You can leave.
Whoa.
And I walked away, and he started talking to the 5 or 6 beat writers who were there every single day of the year. And any electronic media, get out. And I found that out the hard way. I'm like, wow, he is hardcore. So, but look at me now. I'm the chief podcast officer. I forgot to say that off the top. That's my self-title. Since I don't have a title around here, chief podcast officer.
CPO?
Yep, not to be confused with CP3, the point guard, or C3PO, Star Wars. CPO, Chief Podcast Officer, calling it a wrap here on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.